Hello world, Lindsey here, liaison to the senior partners of Blackhorn and Lynx. Let's play CyberHyve.
Oh, God.
Whatever happened to the Signature Masters?
I still own the Signature Masters. I have all the rights to the Signature Masters.
Did you ever re-release them?
Oh, yeah. We reissued the jazz things. The Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Ben Webster, things like that. They're still available right now.
The closest you ever came to a major corporate structure was a quarter, which you kind of off to the side there. How would you ever make it at an RCA or a CBS?
I don't know. I guess I was and probably always is maverick the right word. I was a real character. Signature Records was a major record corporation. We made pop records. We were distributed by the General Electric Supply Corporation. We had 144 distributors. We had 2 distributors in South Dakota, wherever they were. I don't know.
How did you manage to set all up? You're a very good guy.
Well, no, I'll tell you the truth. My father was a great salesman, and he played golf one day in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He wasn't a music man, but he loved music. And I used to bring home records that I had just made by Yank Lawson, people like that. And he thought they were great. And he played golf with a guy named John Busey. It was B-U-S-E-Y. And he was the president of the General Electric Supply Corporation. And on the golf course, he told him that his son made records and General Electric should be in the record business. And General Electric, in about 2 weeks, signed us up to distribute Signature Records. And Signature Records were distributed by 144 General Electric branches.
Because you have to keep track of them.
Well, in those days, I was like 20-some-odd years old, and I never kept track of anything except that I wanted to make records. I was a creative guy, and that's all I knew. And they would order records as though they were ordering light bulbs and nuts and bolts and parts. And what happened was that after 2 years, 90% of all the records we pressed that they ordered were in their basements. And the sales department would see it go down by 5 records, so they'd order 10 more, And eventually...
It's going to be like a light bulb.
Yeah, right. They had like, a couple of million records stashed out there. And that went down the dumper after about 2 years.
The General Electric arrangement, you mean?
Yeah, the General Electric.
Where did you get the money to make records in the first place?
I used to borrow. I used to scrape. I used to steal, whatever.
And you used to hustle those musicians into doing them?
Yeah, in fact, the very first record that I ever made was were 4 piano solo sides by Joe Sullivan. And I booked the studio, I booked Joe, and then I didn't have enough money. I was about 16 years old, mind you, And I couldn't pay for anything, and I never showed up. So we never made the records, and Joe never recorded, and that was the end of that. But in 1938, I got a few bucks together, and I recorded Art Hoodies. Yeah, and that was 1938, 39.
This was all living out a kind of a fantasy for a young guy.
Oh yeah. That's all I knew. I mean, it was a drive. I just had to. I don't think it was that I had to record people, or anybody, or just being in the record business, I had to record unknown players. My thing was that I had to find players that I thought were great and then put them on records and put them out.
1938, 39, 40, where were you finding?
Oh, I used to live in New York City. I would hang out on 52nd Street. I would go to the Village. Art Hodes I found in Forest Hills, where I lived. And that was the home of the West Side Tennis Club, and there was a little bar room up on a hill near Forest Hills, and Art Hodes was playing there. And I went in, and I didn't know who the hell Art Hodes was, but he knocked me out, and I said, let's go in and record. Let's make some records.
What did you have to know about making records, about getting balance, tone, studios, microphones? What did you have to...
Not too much then, really, and I still don't know too much. In those days, as I do to this day, I mean, I don't, it's... my son is 32 years old, and he could operate a board, an engineer's board, and he can get all the sounds and anything he wants from that board. I cannot operate that way. I only go in with an engineer that, catches and understands what I want to hear and what it should sound like. That's the only way I can operate. So that I find myself to this day, I mean, I can go in with the greatest rock and roll engineer and record jazz musicians, and I'll straighten them out as to what I want to hear and how it should sound. And that's how I get it.
And back then, nothing fazed you. You were ready to roll.
No, I guess so. I was a real,
What was the record business like back there? What was around it?
There were only 3 or 4 labels. I mean, at that time, I used to roam the record shops. There was Columbia, there was RCA, and what else was there?
Anybody recording the kind of people you wanted to record?
Well, probably. Well, they were recording people that I enjoyed hearing, but they probably weren't recording, and they just couldn't get around to it. I mean, they couldn't record everybody. So I would hear these guys that I thought were great and wondered why they weren't being recorded, or wondering why the people weren't hearing them, and I'd go in and record them.
Who else besides Hodes was there?
Well, actually, as far as an unknown was concerned, at that time it was Hodes, but it wasn't long after that we ended up in a war, and I was stationed, I was in the Coast Guard, and I wound up at Manhattan Beach in Brooklyn, and Shelly Manne was in the band, and Lou Brown, and Mo Zudikov's brother. What the hell was his name? No, Mo was the trombone, but he had a brother that played trumpet, and I can't think of his name. And Dick Stabile was the leader, and we got stuck out there for a long period of time. No, never really a player. When I was a kid, I had a band, and we used to go into New York and cover 52nd Street, and even then, I just wanted to record these people. I really can't say, Joe, what the hell I think in retrospect, I would have to say that it was some sort of a desire to record these people and let everyone else hear them. Or, why weren't they being recorded? And, I recorded Coleman Hawkins then, and...
Wasn't he being heard anywhere?
Not then, no. Well, he was being heard on the street, but there weren't that many records. And there were a lot of European records out, and no one had them here. And if you wanted a European record, you'd have to go to Marconi's record shop and buy an HMV record, 78.
Over all the years, has that always been in the back of your mind about trying to find people that wouldn't get a shot, or did you temper that?
I think I probably tempered it when I went to work for Decca and Carl, in that, it's a funny thing. I don't know. I like to think of myself as maybe different, but Milt and Mitch Miller and all those guys, everybody was making records based on what they thought were going to be big commercial hits or sell records, and the company's going to make $1 million. I honestly, I don't think I've ever made a record other than the record that I liked, personally. Now, I love jazz. That's my main interest in music. But, I recorded Lawrence Welk, and I recorded the McGuire Sisters. I made a lot of pop records. But all those records were made never thinking, now this is in those days, this wouldn't apply now, forget it today. You can't do it today.
You have to have somebody buy it.
That's right. But in those days, I was making records that knocked me out.
Even with Welk and Boone
Oh,
and the McGuire
God.
Sisters.
God.
Yeah.
I remember being in Clovis, New Mexico, and we had some big hits with Buddy Holly and the Crickets. And there was some kid on a front porch down there. It was like a movie scene. We're all sitting on the porch, and there's a guy sitting on the steps, and he's playing guitar, and he's singing Sugar Time. And I said, listen, don't play that for anyone else. I said, when I get back, I'll give it to the McGuire Sisters. And I got back to New York, and I said to myself, hey, what a great record for the McGuire Sisters. And we went in and we recorded it with Neil Hefti, with a big 16-piece band. And we were recording for Decca at the time, and Carl. And I knew that there were changes taking place in sounds, as far as studios were concerned, how you could isolate performers, drummers, musicians, that there was some technical advancement happening. Even then, oh yeah. And I went to the brass at the company, and I said, look, I'd like to record the McGuire Sisters at Bell Sound on 8th Avenue here in New York. Oh, say, you can't do that. The union will, scream at us. You just can't do it. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to record at night. Tomorrow morning they can fire me, but I'm going to make this goddamn record at Bell Sound. So we went to Bell Sound at 8 o'clock one night, and we started to record. And Neil had probably a very exciting, brilliant arrangement. And I threw the brass section out, and then I threw the saxes out, and all I was left with was the rhythm section, And Neil was getting pissed off, and I said, Bob, what are you doing to me? And we made the record, Sugar Time, with a rhythm section at Bell Sound. And it's a giant smash for them, And that's how, that's how yeah.
When Signature came to an end for a whole variety of reasons, you had to get a job. It was your first job. How did you come to the attention of these people there at Decca?
Well, let me think for a second.
They didn't want you making these jazz records.
No, I went to Jack Cap. I got an appointment with Jack Cap, and I sold him my catalog, the Signature catalog. And I wish I could really be more specific as how it evolved, but I know that I sold him the catalog. And I sort of became, what shall we say? I could walk in and out of the building, and I hung out at Decca. And they used some of the records. And And sort of by hanging out, I guess I wound up with a friendship there. And he was just starting Coral Records. Jack Kapp had said that he felt that he wanted to knock off the independent record companies. And he wanted to form a label to go through independent distributors, and that was the basis for Coral Records. So he used some of my stuff on Coral Records. And then I got a job there, you know, how it happened, I don't know.
What time in your life?
I would say the best time of my life was the 9 or 10 years I spent at Decca. It was really something else. It was just, it was a great relationship, and what I liked was the attitude of Rackmill and Schneider. Kapp had passed away, and I was head of A&R for Coral Records at one point, after Milt Gabler and Jimmy Hilliard. And nobody would pick a song, nobody would say who to record. I had to decide what to do. And it was one guy, one-man show. And that was like Mitch Miller at Columbia, CBS. And Rackmill would say to me many times, he said, Bob, he said, you know, once you have hits, you're here. You know, start lousing it up, you're fired. You know, you're out.
Besides McGuire's and Buddy Holly, who were some of the choral people?
Oh, my God. Oh, goodness. We had Billy Williams, going to sit right down and write myself a letter. Oh, my God. We had a raft of them.
Ruth Clennett promoting records in Boston.
Yeah, right. But we had a lot of hits. We really did. And Jackie Wilson. I'll never forget, there was a fellow named Irv Green, who was the manager of Irv Green was the manager of a black group that Jackie Wilson sang with. Dominoes. And he took me to the Apollo to hear the Dominoes. He wanted me to sign the Dominoes. And I said, I don't want to sign the Dominoes. I said, but I'd love to sign that singer, that Jackie Wilson. You know? So he said, okay. He didn't care, you know, to sign anybody, you know. So we signed Jackie Wilson. And when I went by the Taft Hotel to pick up the contract, I rang the room, and Nat Tarnopol answered the phone, who was like a young kid, a gopher. And he said, Irving Green died last night in the hotel room. And he said, I have the contract signed now. And that's how I signed Jackie Wilson. Yeah, right. Jesus.
Is that still alive?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, God.
And Jackie Jackie is regarded by some as the subject of shout.
Well, you know, somebody asked me, I don't know whether, again, Joe, I don't think, I'm very honest. I don't think I masterminded. I never masterminded. I never figured out, well, if this record was done a certain way and somebody else did it this way, if we do it that way, it's going to sell more. When we first recorded Jackie Wilson, I just said, let's record him with a big band. And all R&B in those days was like 9 guys, heavy rhythm sections, you know. And I took him in with a big band. And all of, like, the first 5 records were smashes. But I must confess that it wasn't, some genius thought that said, I got to figure out, boy, if he's with a big band, it's going to sell more. I just did it that way because I want to hear him that way.
First 5 or 6, 1950 to 1948 to 1956. A lot of people regard it as very bland musically, but getting important records. How talented were some of the people who were doing wires? How did you assess their talent?
Oh, I think they were talented. They were talented.
They needed songs.
Yeah, they needed songs, and they needed arrangements. I mentioned before, Billy Williams, I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter. We sat in the office one day and we wanted to do some old tunes. And I said to the arranger, I said, well, why don't we dress up the arrangement and make the instrumental a la Horace Heidt. We'll do a triple tongue arrangement in the brass section for the instrumental. And Billy, all he kept saying was, oh yeah, that's great. And I said at the end of the record, you might as well say, oh yeah, But I think that the sparkle came from the arrangements. There may be all right. Maybe I'll take a little credit for that, In other words, it wasn't just the guy singing straight ahead, a la the early dance bands, instrumental, vocal thing. So, we did try to sparkle the arrangements, make them happen a bit. And I think that part of the success of that record, in particular, I'm going to sit right down, was the arrangement.
How do you regard the music in that period? Like, before that, the bands, big, terrific music people and great arrangers. And after that, you came to the rock and roll period where some artists were on board. That Patty Page, Maggie Whiting Rose, Wire Sisters period. How do you, as a musician and a music man who's been around for all these years, rate that period? Significant talent.
I don't know. I have to sound like Benny Goodman now because I really never dug singers. I don't. To this day, I don't particularly freak out over singers unless, unless they are blues. Unless it's B.B. King or Chuck Berry or Elvis Presley. People that really.
Real originals.
Yeah, but. I think the pop singers have always sort of left me cold. They really have.
And you were making records, but
yeah.
You're a music man. You're making records.
Yeah, but what I tried to do, and in a way you like forced this out of me because the Billy Williams record is the example. I tried to make the songs interesting and get interesting songs and also get interesting arrangements. Make the music. That's right.
And incidentally, Billy Williams is coming into sing.
That's right. Yeah.
There are still people make records. Richard Perry makes records that way.
Yeah,
Incidentally, here come the pointers.
Yeah, right.
I got everything said. I got the size.
Right.
I know what to do.
And you guys just sit there. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, that was a terrific period because I was a disc jockey. I remember it very well. I met almost all those people and had some relationships. But when I do some overview, that period of music is downgraded, maybe from critics who always put down things around, but it does, I don't know if anything lasting will have come out of that period.
I can't see anything lasting. No, I really can't.
As a guy who came out of jazz and then following that went into one of the most exciting periods, had to be of your career. You left Decca. Was this another one of your stormy events that come up in your life from time to time?
Well, no, when I left these companies, it was always, you're right, it was always stormy. Something happened, but like Teresa will always kid me about making records. If Lawrence Welk today called me and he said, Bob, I want to make the best damn polka record ever made. I don't know what that would be, but I just say, and he said, I'd like you involved. I'd get involved because I would love to make the best damn polka record ever made. That's the record business. And I think that a lot of people in the record business are not really in the record business. The record business is a business that supplies music to the masses. And I remember many times we'd do an LP with Lawrence Welk, and we'd finish the album, we'd get everything there, and said, man, that's the greatest. It was terrific. It really was. For what it was great. And, you know, and I took pride in it. But
Why did you leave Coral and Decca?
well, Randy Wood came along, and well, you know his background, the record company in Gallatin, Tennessee, and he wanted me. He offered me 50% of the company to go to work and try to bring over some of the artists, and Lawrence Welk and Debbie Reynolds and whoever, everybody. And I turned him down. I just couldn't see it. And about a year later, he called again, and he offered me 10% of the company, and he said that he was going to move to California, to Hollywood, and he said, I guarantee you within 6 months, I'm going to sell this company to a major motion picture company. And I turned him down again. And then he sold the company, you know, to Paramount Pictures, right? Yeah, right. So then he came the third time, and I went to work for him.
How soon did you find out that was a mistake?
Oh, I knew it was a mistake right away, but he seemed to be really on the ball, and he seemed to be a nice guy, and he offered me a terrific deal, and I went to work for him. But it couldn't work out because of the
Kerouac thing happened.
Well, it was a clash of personalities, the social differences. He was from the South. It was like a civil war.
If you were putting together your ideal mates,
yeah, right.
It wouldn't be on feeling.
Right.
So he's.
Like I think I mentioned in that little Pulse interview that he wanted me to record Pat Boone, and I'm recording Pat Boone in New York, and first session went off great, and Pat came and said, boy, I love working with you, it looks great. And Randy called at 11 o'clock, how'd the session go? The next morning, the guy's in New York. He thought I know why he flew into New York. He thought I was going to steal Pat Boone and take him and start a record company or something. You know, he just...
Pat Boone and the Welk now were light years away from the stuff we're doing in Signature.
Sure.
But onward and upward.
Yeah, it was, Joe, I really don't know how to tell you. I mean, jazz is it. There's nothing more important to me musically than jazz music, and always has been. And yet, you know, I can record anything. I don't think I would attempt to record, you know, some sort of a heavy metal rock band. I couldn't spend 9 months working with these guys. It would be impossible.
Your sanity would
Yeah, it would be too much, you know.
Just for the record, for this,
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
story of the Jack Kerouac album that you put together with you and Steve Allen, can you just lay that out? You just told it before.
Well, Steve certainly read Kerouac before I did, and I read Kerouac, and he made some sort of contact with Kerouac, and he said, Kerouac agreed to record some poetry, and Steve would play piano. And we decided to record it. I mean, it was simple as that, really. And that was the big hang-up at Dot Records when we put that album out. Later, Steve and I recorded Kerouac again, and Kerouac really threw me. I said, do you want to use Steve Allen again? And he said, no. He said, I'd like to use 2 of my favorite tenor sax players. And I said, who are they? He said, Al Cohn and Zoot Sims. I said, how are these guys going to play with you reading poetry? You know, 2 guys blowing against that. And I said, I want to do it. So we did it. And we're going to reissue that. We're going to put it out again. It's a great LP. And that was the last time I ever saw Kerouac. Zoot and Al left the date. When the session was over, they disappeared. They packed up their horns and left. And I couldn't find Kerouac, and I found him in the studio crying against the wall. And he said, my favorite saxophone players left me. They don't even want to listen to these playbacks, you know. And we went down to a bar on 8th Avenue, and he started to throw beer bottles on out at the taxi cabs on 8th Avenue, and I split. And that was the last time I saw him. But that's
You started the record label with the Kerouac. When you
Yeah, I
and
think
Steve
so.
Allen,
Yeah.
Did you think that had much of a chance of success?
No, we just dug it. We liked the,
I mean the album. I mean the label, the record label.
Oh yeah.
Capitalized enough?
Oh yeah. We thought it was never capitalized enough, but Steve and I thought it had some merit. We recorded Don Adams and Bill Dana. We had a big record with Sasha Berland and Don Elliott, the Nutty Squirrels. Sold about 600,000 records. And but we still never put enough money into it. I had very serious personal problems at the time. I never took care of business. And, after 2 years, down the dumper, as they say.
And how did this shot come along to start the Impulse Line?
Well, I went to work for ABC, I guess, in 1962, 63, around there. And Creed Taylor, actually it was Sam Clark who came up with the name Impulse. He wanted, he's a very astute record guy. He felt that there was a jazz market then. And he felt that one of the problems, and the fallacy was that if you keep throwing jazz on the parent label, it just gets lost, and you should separate it. And he came up with the idea of Impulse Records. So Creed made the first 7 albums, and then Creed Taylor left, and I had to take over because I was already working for ABC.
Oh, you had been brought in?
Yeah, I was doing pop records. I had recorded Frankie Lane and people like that, But the Impulse Line, right at the beginning, I said to myself, I want to make this the greatest goddamn jazz label that there ever was. And they really gave me free rein. They really let me go. And a lot of people in the business today won't believe this, but it happens to be true. In 3 years, I made 150 LPs for Impulse.
Did you produce
Every one of them. I made 150. Nobody. I used to do it myself. I recorded 2 albums in a day. I record Dizzy Gillespie all afternoon, and then that night I'd record Coltrane. But in those days, we made an album in a day or 2 days. We recorded, everything was. That was the holdover from Decca, or Rackmill used to say to me, Bob, look, get 4 sides in 3 hours. I don't care how you do it. Just get 4 sides. Because that was it, 4 3-minute sides. And no bullshit. I mean, nobody's going to go in and, no one's going to hang out and eat sandwiches and drink coffee and smoke pot and hang around and have a great time. We made records. We really did. And, I'm a very easygoing guy, but when it came to making records, I was forceful enough to get these guys to say, we're here to make records. Let's record.
How would jazz people as compared to pop people to make records? Are they more into it? Or?
I think jazz people are... great jazz musicians are a hell of a lot easier to record. I think that whatever insecurities they have, if the insecurities are pushed forward by insecure people making the records, then you got a problem. But I think that if a jazz musician has some faith in what you're trying to do, it's a hell of a lot easier to make records. It really is.
Generally seemed to me like
Yeah.
the jazz producers were strong individuals.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's right.
They're definitely people really work with great talent.
You're right.
When I think of all the top jazz producers, they're strong-willed people. They
were strong-willed people, and they also understood that. they understood the whole history, socially, everything else. They knew how to deal with, yeah.
Not some kid who's a guitar player has a great ear.
You know, and I've seen rock guys, I've watched people produce records, rock guys, rock producers, who almost become a part of the rock band, and then they start bullshitting around, taking their time. And we were doing an album with George Siegel, and it's a funny story. I was in the control room, and Nielsen walked into the control room, and I didn't know who the hell he was. And he said, "There's Bob Thiel here." And I figured, who the hell is this guy? You know, I figured someone's either going to sue me or hit me or whatever, you know. And he said, "Anybody that recorded Eddie Lawrence," he said, "I have to shake his hand." So, you know, then I knew who it was. But I had recorded Eddie Lawrence, the professor, you know. And so I asked him, I said, "Would you sit in on one of the tracks with George Siegel?" He said, "Well, I'll play the piano introduction to whatever tune we were doing." He spent 1 hour playing a 4-bar introduction. And I finally grabbed him and I said, "Harry, I mean, you have to get the hell out of here. I can't sit here forever while you're learning to play whatever introduction you want to play." I said, "Don't you have to be someplace? I mean, what the hell are you doing here anyway?" And they were recording John Lennon at, can't think of the studio on the west side. And he said, "Well, we're producing an album with John Lennon." And I said, "Well, gee," he said, "Yeah," he said, "you know, they can wait. They're all eating, drinking, whatever." He says, "I can get there later tonight." Well, I mean,
Different attitude.
yeah, I don't know. I guess it's good. I don't know. I really, you know, I just don't understand it.
Coltrane was probably the most memorable impulse out of it. You made a lot of records with him.
Yeah.
What about John Coltrane?
Well, I still say to this day, John Coltrane was, I think that he was basically responsible for me really staying in the, he probably wasn't responsible for me staying in the jazz business, because I probably always would have been recording jazz records. I think that if you, hey, look, I can say this. Ken Glancy is a very dear friend of mine. And Ken Glancy is a great jazz lover. He was president of RCA Records. Can't stand Coltrane's music. Milt Gabler, Mitch Miller, all these guys, I'm sure they can't stand Coltrane. Coltrane opened it up for me by just sitting and talking to me and telling me what he was trying to do. I would say that most of the rock producers are probably musicians. I mean, my son is a musician. These guys can go in and produce. I'm not a musician. But you know, it's...
Would you have got it if you hadn't sat and talked with him?
I don't think so. I think that Coltrane, to me, it was fate. I mean, Coltrane explained what he was doing, explained his tone, explained his reason for extending songs indefinitely by using vamps, what he was trying to do. And the more I listened, the more I became involved. Truly emotionally, you know, I really got involved with him.
It's a very narrow circle of people who are involved with Coltrane.
It's a very narrow circle of people, and yet I would say that at least 75% of the saxophone players that I hear today, whether it's David Sanborn or Alex Forster or whoever's playing today, that Coltrane influence is there. It's almost like the Beatles influence rock music. It's like Buddy Holly influenced the Beatles. Coltrane influenced jazz. Is that good?
Well, the narrow circle was made up, to my knowledge, of the most talented and influential people in the jazz world. It's just it never got beyond. It never seemed to get out there, even as much as Leslie Young or Ben Webster or some other players.
Oh, I think it has today. I think that I think that even guitar players. I mean, when you listen to music today, the rock guys and the jazz fusion people especially. We can't go into it now, but I mean, it's definitely all Coltrane influenced.
Who else was there on the label that was outstanding or had an impact on you? On the Impulse label?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think anybody had an impact on me other than people that I recorded who had an earlier impact, like recording Ellington with Coltrane, Ellington with Coleman Hawkins, Dizzy Gillespie, Quincy Jones, people like that. I just felt that I wanted to. Impulse almost became like the Smithsonian Institute of Jazz. I wanted everything on that label. Dixieland, Bobby Hackett, everybody.
And at no time, was there any time when ABC said, hey, too many, too much?
The only time they said too many and too much was with Coltrane. And I was usually, it's like the nighttime session with the McGuire sisters. I remember from the old days, I'd go over to New Jersey and I'd record Coltrane at night and figure when I come in the morning, they'll say you're fired,